Hi guys, how are you? In this video, I'm showing you how to make chapatis, also called rotis. Chapatis are a South Asian flatbread that are made with whole wheat flour. It's a very common everyday bread. You can serve it with curries, so many other endless dishes. My kids always enjoy them with eggs. We also put peanut butter and jelly on them, use them as wraps. So with some practice, they're very, very easy to make at home. And I'm really excited to show you how I make them. So before we work on the dough, I just want to show you a few things that you need to make the chapatis. Here in a bowl, I have my whole wheat flour. I use a good size bowl because when you're kneading the dough, you need some space. And I have some water here, a small clean kitchen towel. This is a flat griddle that the chapatis are gonna cook on. If you don't have a flat griddle, you can also use a shallow frying pan. I've done that before. Here's a rolling pin, a spatula, and some tongs. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is start adding the water. And the important thing is you don't wanna add all of the water at once. And the temperature of the water is really important because the goal is to make sure this dough is really smooth and soft. So I'm just adding a little bit at a time and just using my fingers in a circular motion to bring it together. So chapati was one of the first things I learned how to make from my mom. And that was really a long time ago. I think I must have been a teen when I learned how to make it. So I've definitely been making them for a really long time. As you can see, it's coming together. Always add little bit of water at a time. And sometimes in addition to the water, salt and oil is also added too. You'll find some recipes like that. I'm gonna make sure all of this comes together. Right now, I'm just trying to get it into like one large ball. And make sure there's no dry flour here. So at this point, it's still gonna be coarse and lumpy like this. And see, it's sticking together, it's coming together. Just gonna add a little bit more water on my hand. Okay, now that it's come together, we're gonna start kneading it. Okay, so this is what it should be looking like right now. To show you how to knead it, I'm gonna take this out of the bowl. So like I said, for this part, I'm just using a flat surface. Make sure your surface is nice and clean. Usually I would just knead in the bowl, but I just want to make sure you guys see it really well. So kneading is a very important part for the dough for chapatis. If you want the chapatis to be really soft and fluffy and not dense, kneading is really important. Now you can always use a mixer if you have one to make the dough, but I think if you've never made it before and for beginners, I would definitely recommend using your hands to knead, because this way you can actually feel the consistency. So once you have enough practice, you can always go to using the mixer. And kneading also helps the gluten that's in the flour, in the wheat, to form, and that's exactly what we need for the dough to be really nice and soft. All right, so there's a few different ways to knead and different people do it differently. But what you pretty much do is you can use your knuckles, you flatten the dough, and then you stretch it and you pull it back in. And you keep repeating this process. You can do it by one hand, you can use both of your hands, and you keep wetting your hand with some water. I'll show you another way. Some people, again, you wet your hands with water, they pull in and they push back like this. So there's a few different ways to do it. And what's gonna happen is the dough is gonna not look as coarse. All the lumps and bumps will be gone. It'll be very nice and smooth. So I'm gonna knead this for about 5 to 7 minutes by hand. Okay, I was kneading for about 5 to 7 minutes. It's definitely a workout. The dough is really nice and smooth. So now I'm gonna put this in a small bowl, cover it, and just let it sit at room temperature and let the dough sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then I'll knead it again just for a few more minutes and we'll get to making the chapatis. Okay, the dough is ready. I let it rest for 10 to 15 minutes and I just kneaded it just for a few more minutes, and now it's nice and smooth and we're gonna start making the rotis. For this part, to make the little discs before we roll it out, you need a little bit of extra dry flour on the side, and I've got my daughter's little mini rolling pin. All right, so the first thing you want to do is lightly dust your fingertips in the dry flour. Take a small piece of the dough, and it's like maybe like about 3 inches. You don't want it to be too big or too small, especially if you're learning, and in the beginning it's just going to be easier if you are taking small pieces. The chapati is going to be a lot easier to handle. So to make the perfect round disc, this is what you do. You put the piece of the dough in your non-dominant hand, and you take your right hand, you take the sides and you bring them in, pick it up and flip it around like this. So you're taking the sides, bringing it in around, and you see how it's coming together? It's forming a really nice round shape. Once you do this, you're gonna flip it over, dust your fingers in flour again, and your palm. Now the seam side down, you're gonna roll it like this between both of your hands. Now I'm not going like this, as you can see, because we want the seam to close, and that's gonna give you a nice soft chapati. So the right hand on top, in a circular motion, I'm trying to close this seam. And now you will see it's round and the seam is closed. Next, you put it in the flour, the dry flour, flatten it, and you put this between your palm like this, and we're making it into a flat disc. You can do this as well, just between your fingertips and thumb. So it should be looking like a nice round disc. Now we're gonna roll it out after dusting it in flour again. Okay, start rolling out gently. There's a few ways you can do this. You can roll straight towards one direction, turn it, roll again, turn it again, roll. Make sure it's nice and round. I'm gonna dust it in flour again, and this will help make sure it's not sticking to the surface. You can move it. And as you can see, this is a way to do it too. My rolling pin is kind of going in a little bit of a circular motion, and you see the dough kind of just turning lightly. I'm gonna dust it again. You don't want too much flour on it, but definitely in the beginning when you're learning, you want to make sure that you have enough flour on there, because that's really going to help you roll it out nice and easily. And just make sure you're getting all the sides, they're nice, even, and thin. And in the beginning, I would definitely recommend that you make your chapatis kind of small. The larger you make them, I think it can be a little bit hard to handle them and work with them. So smaller the better in the beginning. I'm gonna make you another one so you guys can see. Try to make them all one size. I'm doing the same thing. I'm bringing in the sides towards the middle. And that will help create that nice round shape like this. Start rolling it in your palm to close that seam like this. Add it in the dry flour. I'm gonna flatten it. Can do it like this. Okay, I'll roll this one out too. You guys can definitely use like a regular size rolling pin. I'm using my daughter. She really wanted me to use her rolling pin in the video. When you add a lot of dry flour to this, I mean in the beginning you may have to. Once you put this on the hot griddle, the dry flour is going to start to burn and your rotis will just have a very dense texture. Okay, once you have all the rotis rolled out, now you're going to cook them. Make sure your griddle, your pan, is on nice medium to high heat because you don't want to cook them for a really long time. They'll get dense and they'll get dry. And I'm going to show you the signs that you want to look for so when you know when to flip it. As you can see, the color is starting to change. You're going to start to see some bubbles form up right here. I'm going to flip it. You can see all the bubbles. And at this point, you don't want to start pressing the center or any of the sides because it won't poof up. You can move it like this. I use a clean kitchen towel. I flip it again. And now I gently press with this kitchen towel on the sides. Not in the center right now, just gently starting to poof up, puff up. And you flip it. So at this point, as you can see how fast this is cooking. That's why you want to make sure you have all of them rolled out. Be careful of the steam. And there's no right and wrong. You can flip it as many times as you want. Like if you see some uncooked spots, you flip it again. But moving very quickly. This is done. You just top it with some butter so they'll stay soft. You can also add some ghee to this. And that's done. Look how nice and fluffy it is. And you can keep it covered. I'll show you another one. If you don't want to press the sides with a kitchen towel, if you feel like you're too close to the hot pan, you can definitely use a spatula, and you can also use some tongs to flip it. Color is changing, you're seeing bubbles. And as you can see, I didn't add a lot of extra flour to this, so you don't see any burnt flour on the pan. Flip it. Or I guess I can show you with this. You can flip it like that. Give it just a few seconds. I'm going to flip it again because the other side was my top side of this. It's starting to puff up. Lightly press the sides. You don't want to do it really hard in the center because you won't get it to poof up. Flip it. It's cooked. And just lightly because you don't want the steam to get on your hand. And this is done. I'll show you with this. Just pick it up like this. And here are your delicious, soft rotis. Super easy to make.